All right, this is going to be a quick review for Hammer of the Gods, the Led Zeppelin Saga by Stephen Davis. This was originally published in 1985. It does have an extra chapter in this book. I think it's the last chapter because it talks about Zeppelin's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and kind of the MTV Unplugged of Robert Plant and Jimmy Page when they got together to do their unleaded program. But, what do I think about this book? Well, it's kind of a legendary book. There's a couple of Led Zeppelin, whatever you want to call them, biographies or whatever. This is kind of one of those raunchy tell-all books from like the early 80s. And it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I think a lot of the information of this book came from Richard Cole, which was the band's touring manager. And so it's disputed on what's true and what's not true. There's one incident in particular which is kind of corroborated, but nobody actually knows all that was going on with that, whether there was a shark involved or a red snapper or what. It's disputed. I really don't want to talk about it because it's pretty foul. I guess referred to as the mud shark incident, but I'm not going to go into it. So this book is kind of like everything you would expect it to be: sex, drugs, rock and roll. Led Zeppelin, I think the most interesting parts were the formation of the band, how Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were studio musicians, and then Robert Plant and John Bonham, the drummer, were in a group called the Band of Joy. So you had like these established professional musicians with Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones fused together with these country bumpkins, and then they get kind of mashed together. These two worlds collide, and then they go on tour. They put together an album and they go out on the road, and antics and hijinks ensue. And I think probably the parts, if you just focus on the antics of the band, it can get pretty tiring because it just seems to be a laundry list of sexual assault and crimes of vandalism, destroying every apartment or every place that they stay at. One incident when they were in Japan, a couple of the band members, I think it was Richard Cole. Richard Cole seems to be a big instigator. Richard Cole and I think it was John Bonham bought samurai swords and proceeded to destroy all of the furniture and the doors with the katanas that they bought. So I don't know what to say about this. I'll say as far as those parts of the book, I found it really tiring. I think that the documentation of the music is where the book really shines. Stephen Davis goes into all the influences for basically every track that Led Zeppelin recorded. He tells you about the what influenced it, and then he kind of describes, kind of what the music sound like. It actually kind of gets you to want to listen to the song, which is great. And then the book actually has in the back a bibliography, okay, which is pretty nice. And then I think where it really shines through is the discography. If you want to know all the music that Zeppelin recorded pre and post Zeppelin, including Jimmy Page's time with the Yardbirds, this goes all the way up to, I think, 1995, but you have the recordings here. There's lots of bootlegs available as well. It goes into some of these bootleg recordings, right, that are down here. And then post-Zeppelin, these would be like solo albums and stuff by like Robert Plant and whatnot. And I think the book only goes up through 1995 in this extended version. But pretty good book if you're a Zeppelin fan. If you're not a Zeppelin fan, I don't know why you would read it. I think that probably the guy that comes out of this book smelling like a rose more than anybody else is probably John Paul Jones, because he pretty much stayed secluded from the band. When they toured and stuff, he wouldn't stay with them. He didn't get involved in all the antics. As a result, he didn't end up, strung out on smack like Jimmy Page or um, suffer like tragedy in his life. Although I don't think that all of Robert Plant's tragedy was his fault. The thing that happened with his son suddenly dying of like a stomach virus, he had nothing to do with that. It's really sad. That happened in '77. And then the band's like hero Elvis died like a month later. That was one of the things that I found interesting, was that Elvis Presley evidently was a Led Zeppelin fan. I mean, he asked them for their autograph. So those chapters were weird. It was kind of interesting, hearing about Elvis meeting with Zeppelin and whatnot. So I don't know. Book is interesting. It's kind of a rock shockumentary, if you will, I guess. We'll say about John Paul Jones. I'll just read this one excerpt about John Paul Jones, the bass player here. Tragically, John Bonham, the drummer, died from drinking himself to death on a vodka bender in 1980. And then the band broke up. But after the band broke up, in the chapter that's called Coda, okay, John Paul Jones disappeared completely as a pop recording artist and stage personality. That identity was retired, and John Baldwin returned to his family life in the placid English countryside. Everybody around Led Zeppelin knew that Baldwin was its only real survivor. He hadn't died or lost a child. He never got into hard drugs. Instead, he retired to his farms with a great fortune and his dignity intact. From time to time, Baldwin's good luck was attributed to his refusal to join Led Zeppelin's legendary Satanic Pact, which is disputed. There's a rumor going around that Led Zeppelin sold their souls to the devil, and that all of the band members signed a contract in blood, except for John Bonham. So, one of those legendary things. But Jimmy Page's kind of cringeworthy obsession with Aleister Crowley is real. His relationship with Laurie Maddox absolutely happened, and I don't know which is more disturbing with Jimmy Page, the fact that he was involved with a 14-year-old girl, or that her mother seems to be okay with it. I mean, that's bizarre. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this book that's off-putting. I think that the musical excerpts here, where he talks about the musical influences and the discography, are where the book shines. Everything else is kind of a mixed bag. So be warned, if you get triggered by stuff, there's a lot of really triggering things in this book. They definitely would not survive the Me Too movement. There is stuff, I would compare it to, Caligula. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty crazy. All right. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.